Hello, and welcome to our very first virtual coffee special edition, the interview series. I'm Becca Harat-Weigel, and I am so happy to be here with you and to be able to share this experience with you. I'll be the moderator today, and I host virtual coffee on Tuesday and Thursday every week. You can sign up at virtualcoffee.io. Today, I am so thankful to be joined by Erin Fox, a software engineer at ConvertKit. She's going to be playing our interviewer. She's going to be interviewing one of our community members, Hinata Mirioki, who is a Flatiron School grad, and she is currently working in technical support. So here's how it's going to work. Erin has already received Hinata's CV and a job description, and she's going to be spending the next 20 to 30 minutes asking her questions based on that description. Hinata is going to allow us to watch her interview, and then afterwards, Erin is going to provide her feedback. Erin is playing a certain type of interviewer today. And so she'll reveal that at the end of the interview, but I bet you can guess it as you watch along. After the interview is done, there's going to be time for questions and also feedback from the audience members who are viewing this live. We plan on doing more live events, so be on the lookout for that. And if you sign up on virtualcoffee.io, you will be notified of when those events are. A special thank you goes out to Erin and Hinata for doing this for us and for being the first ones to volunteer. We're so excited to see how this goes. And also a special thank you goes to Sarah McCombs, who has been so helpful in all of the things that we've been doing in virtual coffee, but certainly in planning and helping to make sure that this goes on today. And last but not least, to Gant Laborde, who inspired this and who helped walk us through the planning process and how to go about doing this. So I'm super excited to share the following video with you, and I hope you learn a lot. If you have any comments, leave them below. Thanks.
All right. Hi, I want to say Renata, but it's Hinata?
Yeah, it's a Hinata, but I'm fine. I know for Americans it's easy to speak Renata.
No, I want to get it right. So Hinata, right?
Yeah.
Hinata. Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for taking the time. We're really impressed with your resume and had some follow-up questions, a lot of getting to know you. I'm a software engineer on the team, so you'd be working equally beside me. And I've been at the company for about a year now, so kind of know a little bit about it. I just have a list of about 10 questions, so you ready to jump in?
Yeah, sure. And thank you for having me.
Great, no problem. I'd love to just learn a little bit more about you, like what you're looking for in your next role, what you've been up to the past couple of years.
Okay. I'm originally from Brazil, but I've been living in London for the past 2 years. All my past experience was with customer service admin duties. And although I did a wide range of different jobs, one thing that I always loved was to create things. Either it was spreadsheets or things. So I kind of got drawn to development because of that. I always liked to create it. I started to learn development by myself, but then after a while I thought that doing a boot camp would be a way to speed up the process, and I finished Flatiron bootcamp now in March, right in the beginning of the pandemic. So a good start to looking for a job, and I'm looking for a role where I actually can learn. I'm someone that loves to learn, and I'm looking for a company where I can use what I saw on the bootcamp and I can learn more.
Great. And you said you went to Flatiron. I'm also a bootcamp grad, but I went to General Assembly. How did you like Flatiron?
Well, I almost went to General Assembly. Actually, I was between both of them. I really, really enjoy it. But I think I was quite lucky because I had an amazing cohort where we helped out each other from day one. So that was really helpful. And to be honest, it's a different setting of schools and universities. So I really like that way of teaching, where it was more first you do and then you get the explanation. So it was an amazing time, and I really miss it deeply.
Yeah, it's always such a fun I remember it was the hardest thing I've ever done, but also like the greatest thing I've ever done. Like I would go to the bathroom and cry because I was like, I don't know how to do this. But then like the next day I would get it working and it would just be great. So I understand the pain and like I think the hardest part is like you're an engineer and it's that weird in between phase of I graduated boot camp. I'm an engineer. Yes, I am. So remember that. Okay. I'd love to hear more about your technical support role right now, and just kind of how long you've been there, what you enjoy about it, what you don't enjoy about it, why you're looking to move on to another role.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to start on Monday, so I can't say much about the job itself. But one of the reasons I actually applied for the job because with my past in customer service, I think I have a way of understanding what people means, not what they say. Because there is a difference, and people that work in customer service know that. And I also use this for my code a lot. So that's what got me drawn for the job role itself.
Great. And it seems like you've done quite a few projects in at Flatiron. So, which one was your favorite? I'd love to hear more about your favorite one.
Well, my favorite one actually was the game. It's called Spunk, but it was like a play of word with like Spock from. I like that project not because it was the best one or is the best code, but because it was the most challenging one. Because I was in a group with two other developers, and we decided to make this game with this HTML5 framework called Phase3. And none of us had ever seen this code before. We just knew that it was written in JavaScript. But we still decided like, well, we have 1 week, let's learn and execute and deliver it in 1 week. So it was a little bit of chaos in the beginning, but in the end, we actually have it working and it was a lot of fun. And it also had like animations and sounds, what actually made it much more like fun to actually test your code than just seeing the information on the screen. But if it's my best code, certainly not. But I was really happy that to completely go out of my comfort zone and have something in the end.
Great. And you mentioned there's some chaos in the beginning. How did you yourself in that situation like navigate through it to have like the successful game in a week?
Because we are like in three in the group, our first idea was like, let's divide and conquer. So we searched about how the language would actually works, and we saw like examples of simple games online and everything. So we separate for each one would be like focus on a certain area of the game, and we would completely focus on that. So that helped a lot because I knew exactly what I need to do. But one way that I use a lot is because I was not really 100% familiar with the code. I would often try to find tutorials online or people that already built something that was roughly similar to what I wanted. So I could see how their code behaves. So like I would copy paste it, I would change to see what was doing what, and then I would adapt it to my own needs. So that way I could, even though like I could not understand maybe 100% of what was written, but I could predict 100% of what it was doing.
Great. And so then what part of the or section of the app did you get to work on?
I actually was focused more in the game itself, because like there was certain parts like we had the back end and the front end outside of the game and other things as well. But I was like more focused on actually writing, like the ball would have to move and it would have to recognize the paddle to be hit on and actually work with the physics on the games. And that's something I haven't worked before, like how to predict a reaction and everything, how to calculate space, and also like animations and how to add that. Like for example, when you hit the ball, it explodes. How to actually add that. But in the end, another guy from the group, he actually started helping me once he finished his side, and we finished the game together.
And so you mentioned that you got assigned something that you had no idea how to do, and you started to look for some tutorials. I'd love to hear your process or the steps you take to learn. Like what's the best way that you yourself learn something?
I'm one of those parts that I learn by doing. I can read tutorials, I can watch videos, and I really love to read. But for me to actually learn how to do something, it's easier if I actually focus on a really small project. Like, for example, right now I'm learning Python, and I found like this library that does speech recognition. I never coded in Python before. I just roughly saw how the syntax was. I got the library and I made it work, and I was poking until it worked, and how to write a function, and I would like search how to write a function, see how it was done, and then apply it to the code. In this way, I know that probably if I go back to my code in a couple of weeks from now, I can see like some really some things that I should not have written. But this way, it's easier for me to actually apply what I'm learning and see how it behaves. So when I in the future using something similar, I know how it actually acts.
Great, awesome. Let's see. I'd love to talk about your Studies Buddies project. That one was very cool with the GitHub and the demo. I'd like to talk a little bit more technical. So can you walk me through the architecture, why you chose Ruby on Rails and all that different aspects and corners of
it? The Ruby on Rails wasn't our choice. It was because of the bootcamp. Like, we had to deliver the project with what we learned. Our idea was to actually do something that was fairly simple in idea, but it would be completely bug-free in the end. So we actually started doing a map with all the models that we wanted, and we actually did a list on Word with all the actions the users would have to do, what we would receive, our ideas that we wanted the app to have, and also our MVP. So we have like a whole file that I still have to put on my portfolio of all these kind of things. And once we had all this ready, we actually started creating the database and everything. I'm someone that is really interested in cybersecurity, so one of the things I was most worried about was actually with encryption of passwords and validation. So the whole website is really tight to not to suffer any SQL injections or anything. At least the much I know about SQL injections, but I'm still junior, so please don't try to hack the website. It's just don't. But it was really fun, and we used Bootstrap for design. It was also a new thing that I haven't done before, and it was actually quite nice to learn. Although I really like to build my own CSS because I like the liberty to choose the things to be the way I want them to be.
Great. And then if you could redo that, or if you didn't want to redo it, which is fine, but if you wanted to redo it in different technologies or anything like that, what would you change?
Well, because the app was just built on Rails, Ruby on Rails, I felt like if you actually use React for rendering, it would actually help. Like, for example, on the main page, you have a filter where you can choose what kind of study groups you want to participate, if it's for Python study groups or Ruby. When you actually select, you are actually sent to another page, but we did in a way so you actually don't notice it. And I know that's like not the best way because you are rendering the page again. So it would be nice to actually have a more dynamic front end. So in, like, for example, if someone with not the best internet connection, the website would actually perform better.
And have you worked with performance at all?
I have read about it, but no, it's not something I have worked with.
Yes. So you have quite a few technical skills. So Ruby on Rails, Python, JavaScript. Which one's your favorite?
I don't think I have like a favorite language or anything. I just like to build things. So if the job is in Python, in Ruby, or PHP, I'm fine with either. JavaScript was the first programming language that I actually start learning. So there is a special place in my heart for it, but I really enjoy Ruby and Python because of all the software engineering that I can do, not just focus on web development. I think Karen froze.
I think Karen's frozen. Let's give her a minute and hopefully she'll come back. We can see you, but we can't, you're muted.
Sorry about that. My internet just went out.
All right, we're good now.
Great. I don't know how much you heard of that. Do you want me to repeat the question?
I didn't hear anything.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. For this role, we'll mostly be focusing for front end, and we're starting to move our front end away from Ruby on Rails to a React front end micro infrastructure. So you are, it seems like, very much more of a full stack engineer, but for this it would be mainly focused on front end. Would love your thoughts on that. Yeah.
I like to be a full stack because it gives me the knowledge to understand what's being given to me in the front end. So sometimes if I'm doing a fetch call or something and it's not exactly what I wanted, because of my knowledge as a full stack, I know where to look and what to ask for all developers and how to solve that issue. But I really like to work with React because, like I said, it's really dynamic and it's really nice to actually see the work I'm doing right in front of me. And my last two projects on the bootcamp was actually with React, the Site of Photos website, and also my final project of the portfolio was also there. I also did another one, but it's not posted because, to be honest, I just didn't like the design, so I didn't post it.
Great. And so, what do you like about React?
I like how it is evolving, and because if you see like React, it has changed in the past years, and to be honest, it's quite exciting how JavaScript and React it's evolving. And I always been like more focused on drawing and graphic design before actually going to development. So I like to see what I'm doing, and React actually allows me to combine these two things of me, like of the development area and also my creative aspect, where I actually likes to do visual things.
Got it. And with React, what's something that you wish you could change about it?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I haven't put thought on it before. I think one thing is like, especially JavaScript is going more to functional programming than object-oriented, and I think maybe something that would be more interesting to see on React. Like, I mean, you can already write a functional, forgot the word. But I still think that would be a nice switch because you'd make like the program much faster. I could be wrong as well. You get me surprised in this question.
No worries. I probably have a couple more React questions since it will be a lot of the focus for this role. Have you ever done any testing with React in specific or testing in general?
I've started learning testing Ruby on Rails, but I haven't actually started on React. To be honest, it is something that I've started looking into it, but me as a developer, I'm the kind of person that I write one line of code and then I just test it to see if it is actually doing what I want it to do.
Got it. No worries. Yeah, I'm still learning testing, so we'll get there. How about React hooks? Have you gotten into React hooks, or are you still on like the component lifecycle methods? I'd love to hear any thoughts there.
Yes, I actually did one project in React without and one with React hooks, and to be honest, it's much better because I think like in programming, your worst enemy is yourself. So like and hooks does help a lot with human error. So sometimes when just like passing a prop, I'd misspell the name in one of the parents and just the whole chain would break. So, and hooks, it's really handy with that. But I know that my knowledge in hooks is still quite superficial because I've watched more tutorials about it and I saw that it actually can do much more than what I've been using until now.
Got it. Cool. Have you ever worked with like we have a lot of technologies for this on our team, but have you ever experimented with GraphQL before?
No, I haven't.
Cool. No problem. Sorry, just taking some notes. Awesome. I'd love to now kind of get into so you're starting a new position on Monday, tomorrow. It's on Monday. And I'd love to kind of hear about your goals as an engineer in the next few years, or your goals just in general career-wise. If you could kind of go, I'm not going to be like, oh, give me your 5-year plan. I'd love to just kind of hear what you're really looking for and some goals for yourself that you're setting.
Well, I do have like a rough 5-year, 10-year plan. But to be honest, as someone that just left the boot camp now, I know there is a lot that I don't know about the field. So although I do have some plans, like for example, in 5 years I want to be in a mid senior or senior position, and maybe focus more in a full stack position. I know that I also have to give me the space to test the waters and see what's there. And to be honest, like I saw that the company, it's actually quite big and there is a wide range of developers. And I think like the best way of knowing who you want to be in the future is actually knowing the people that are already in the future, like who you want to be in a couple of years, and actually how did they get there.
Great. So those are all the questions I had for you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Hinata, you did an excellent job. Thank you so much. Erin, would you like to tell us what type of interviewer you were?
I forget exactly, but I was just the nice friend, easier type of interview.
You are the friend interviewer, and you did an excellent job playing the friend interviewer. So typically at this point, the interviewer would give you the opportunity to ask some questions because this isn't a standard type and Erin doesn't really work for this company. she can't answer your questions. But do you have questions that you would have asked in an interview at this point?
I have like my standard questions, like, for example, do you have other juniors in the group? How big is the team I will work on? We will work with the person that's interviewing me or in another team. And to be honest, I'd also search like some blog posts of the company and make questions based on that.
Very good. Thanks. So now I'm going to give Erin the opportunity to provide you with some feedback, and then after that, I will allow everybody to post their questions in the chat, or if they wanted to offer some feedback as well, I think that we are up for that. So I'm going to hop off the screen and then go ahead, Erin.
Cool. I just posted a tweet I did a while back of all of like the list of questions that I kind of gathered that I ask when I'm being interviewed by a company. So hopefully those might be helpful for some people. Yeah, so feedback. I was taking notes. I should have mentioned that. I was taking notes while we were chatting. For the tell me about yourself, I thought it was great. I think there was a lot of like key things that you peppered in, like always create things. I thought that was a great line to have in there. And also like you went into how you got into engineering, which is like right along the lines of what I was looking for, because you already answered my next question, so I didn't even have to ask it. I think I asked what you're looking for in your next role, and you mentioned where you can learn. I would also add where you like what you can bring to a team. There's a lot of great companies out there that are hiring juniors and just want to hire juniors and teach them things, but you also want to add like a little bit more of advantage to that. I think like maybe saying really like where you can learn and like really utilize like my Googling skills. Like I've got so good at boot camp, like learning how to Google something, and I don't know, like something like that that you can bring to the team, other than just kind of like, I'm a junior, teach me, which I totally get. So yeah, maybe just try and pepper something in with that. Really enjoyed why you decided to get into engineering. It shows you're like a really self-starter. Again, the always create line was great. One thing with the how did you enjoy Flatiron? Maybe it's just a personal thing, but I don't like the word lucky. You said you were very lucky to have like a good cohort, but I think it's just your hard work that you were doing. So, I mean, like, yeah, you're very fortunate and like blessed and privileged to be able to do this, but I think you should say like how much work it was and how much you put into it, which really was the overall like why you enjoyed it so much. Maybe, I don't know. That's kind of just like my take on that one. With the game project, sounds really cool. I kept feeling like I was like pulling to get you to talk about more technologies. Like I wanted like more specifics of what you actually did. And then when I asked like what kind of like problem solving skills were going on, and it was more of just like splitting up the team when I was trying to get to like more technical. So I feel like with most of the questions I asked, I kept wanting you to go more technical in it. So if there was a time to like drop a technology or drop like a really nasty bug that you figured out, or like a really cool tutorial that went into detail on React hooks and like integrating it with this, I feel like a lot of interviews that I've done, they all usually always want me to get more technical with my answers. I thought the how you learn, where you mentioned I learn by doing and you focus small and then you grow from there, I thought that was fantastic. I think always, like for me, it took me a while to learn like, oh, start small instead of just like panic at the whole project. So I thought that was great. I think for my question on your resume for, I think you have quite a few skills like Ruby on Rails, Python, JavaScript. Like that's a lot. And so I think it shows that you don't have like one like specific thing, which I get because you're trying to land a job. But I think a little bit more tailored answer would have been like when I asked Ruby on Rails, Python, JavaScript, like which one do you like the most or which experience you have the most with. I think if you were to say, well, each of these different technologies have their own like specialities and are good for certain situations. Like if you have a small team, like Ruby on Rails is great because you can do things really quickly and up and running. And if you're like building a React application and you all of a sudden need to go to mobile, it's like you could say, oh, like since you already have JavaScript engineers working on React, you could do a React Native project because React is really versatile in that way. And even if you don't know like how to do anything in React Native, just knowing that kind of like architectural wise that it's there could be helpful. So yeah, I guess with that one, just like try and get a little more technical again if you can. I would definitely Google. I got the question all the time of like, oh, why do you like React and what would you change about it? Like those ones are I got it once and I was like, I would make it faster. I think you said that too, just make it more quick. But I would have some like concrete answers in mind for that because I think that like tells a lot that you've done your research and you know more about that technology. When you were explaining your study buddies project, I mentioned that I clicked on the link and like I did it and played around with it. So I guess that should have implied that I already like knew the UI of it and you kind of were walking me through the UI when really I wanted to like walk through the technologies that it was. So again, just try and get a little bit more technical with that. Oh, I forgot to ask about your blog posts. They're great, by the way. I might have to them. So when I asked about, so you're under for your resume, you have full stack developer, which I agree with. I think having a title of full stack developer makes you more like valuable in the industry, more like versatile with what you can do, and you can understand kind of a picture of things. For this role specifically, it was front end, and I feel like it got a little turned off when you wanted to be full stack, which I get. So this is like a very conflicting feedback for me for you, but I guess like the only thing that would be kind of weird is that this is a front end role and it sounded like you were only looking for a full stack role, but maybe that was just me thinking that. So maybe you could say like, I'm always like looking to enhance my front end role, and in the job description, it looked like you're moving from Ruby on Rails to React. So that kind of is a full stack role in my mind. You know, you could say like, oh, every company has their own definition of what full stack is. So some sly stuff like that. Yeah, I would definitely research more on React. I asked a lot of questions about it because it sounded like that was the project you would be working on from Ruby on Rails to React. I said, like, what would you change about it? I think you mentioned it's always evolving, which is true and annoying at the same time. But yeah, just do a little bit more research on like the main technology that the job posting would be about. And then I do love your honesty with testing. You're like, oh, I started reading about it, which is great. So I think the honesty really, really shows your skill level, but also that you are interested in doing it. So that was good. When I asked if you ever worked with GraphQL, I think you just said no, I haven't. But then maybe add, I'm really interested in it though. Like I heard there's a great community around it. So maybe just like add a little thing at the end there. And then lastly, what are your goals? I wouldn't say like I just left a boot camp. I feel like the just word and the lucky aren't really my favorites. I would say like I completed my boot camp. I've done a really great projects, and now there's a lot more I want to learn. instead of there's a lot I don't know. Because that's kind of like a weird flag in my mind of like, she doesn't know a lot, but you do. And so you should say, there's so much more out there that I want to learn. So maybe just switch the vocabulary there a little bit. And I love that you like looked at the engineers and like their different skill levels for this job postings team. So it shows that you really want to like place yourself in a good position to learn. So yeah, great job.
Thank you for the interview.
Yeah, I want to, okay, so if anybody has questions now, go ahead and throw those in the chat. But also, Hanada, if you have questions for Erin, feel free to ask those now as well. That's okay. You don't have to have any questions. I put you on the spot there. I think that you both did an excellent job, and so thank you so much. Erin, that was really great feedback, and I think that was really useful, and especially, I interviewed a little bit over this whole COVID break, and I never got the question about like, what would you change about React, or what do you like about React? And it got me thinking like, okay, what would I want to change, or what do I like? And now I think I'm going to have to do my own Googling to figure out how I would answer that, because I'm sure that there are things, but I had never considered that. So those are really interesting questions to think about.
I think because of like the bootcamp, we actually don't choose. I never actually put thought like, why would I use React and not something else? So I was like, well, okay, I learned React because they told me to, but it was a really interesting question that I have to put some study on it as well.
I'm not seeing any questions, but I'll give another minute. Also, if anybody had some feedback, I think that we would be up for that as well. So if you did have feedback, feel free to put your video back on so we can see you provide feedback. And now would be the time to do that as well. Erin, what is maybe your favorite interview question that you've been asked?
Ooh, that I've been asked. This is kind of like a selfish answer, but I love the tell me about yourself one, because I did a career change, and I don't know, I'm like very proud of where I'm at right now in my career, and I never thought that I would like get here in a way, or like have everything that I have. So like, I don't know, I get like the twinkle in my eye being like, yeah, so I quit my job and did a boot camp. So that's my selfish answer of just like, I love talking about myself, which is not normal, but yeah, that's probably my favorite one, just to show the growth that I've been through.
No, I think that's great. And I think too, for me, that type of question helps to calm my nerves a little bit, because I know what I've been through, right? Like, so like, okay, I can talk about this. This is a normal conversation. Okay, so it looks like we have a couple people providing feedback. After you provide your feedback, if you could turn your video back off, that would be fantastic. But let's go with Andrea. Welcome and thank you. Oh no, I didn't mean you turn off your video right now. You can provide your feedback first.
You said we could, so sorry. I have a related question, but I'll save it in case it's not directly related to the interview. So I'll wait for others to go.
Do you have feedback that you want to provide?
Well, yeah, I admire your bravery for even doing this, period. It just seems like such a vulnerable place to be in. And let's see, turn this back on. And I thought that you were able to think on your feet really well. And, it really came across as authentic. I didn't feel like at any time you were, because you were able to admit, yeah, I don't know as much about that, or, so I thought you did a pretty good job. I agree with some of the things that Erin said, but I would have made probably a lot of the same I don't know if we should call them mistakes, but the things that she provided feedback on. So yeah, good for you.
Thanks. And I think there's certainly not mistakes in this context, and that's why we're doing it, right? Like, to get this practice and to be able to have this valuable feedback, I think is so helpful. So I really appreciate that. And I want to say that Tori just put in the chat that she was definitely asked what excites her the most about technology or whatever technology the company is using pretty often. So that's definitely something, if you're looking at interviewing or you're starting or you're continuing, something that you would want to know before going into that. So thanks, Tori. Graham, welcome for feedback, and I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I've got two things. Number one, yeah, I think like willingness to just say I don't know, I think is super valuable, right? Like the worst thing you can do is just try to bullshit your way through an answer you don't actually know the answer to. So that's really good. One piece of feedback I would give on that, what I try to do and what I've been kind of impressed when I'm interviewing people is what I've seen people say, I don't know, but here is kind of what I would assume based on other things that I do know, and relate it to some other problem or piece of information that you do know, right? And then go on to say, and this is how I would approach finding out, right? Like this is, I Google this, I have this mentor who I work with who I'm able to go approach with questions, or this is how I'd approach it within a team, that kind of thing. So if you don't know something, let them know that you have kind of a process for how you go from not knowing to knowing, right? So that's one thing. The second thing, and there's not any real specific piece that I'm kind of touching on, but just kind of a global idea for new developers. And that is kind of finding an opportunity within a interview to relate the skills that you have from a previous career to the skills required as a developer, right? So when I was starting, before I became a developer, I owned a gym. So did personal training and that kind of stuff for a long time. And so one of the things that I always tried to do was kind of talk about how, somebody would come to me with like this shoulder issue that they've been unable to do this certain thing for, since their injury in college or whatever. And a lot of it was just problem solving. And like, here's kind of the process that I went through of debugging this human body, right? And this is how I, related that to kind of my process when it comes to coding. So that's all.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so I don't have any more questions in the chat, but if I just want to thank again Hinata and Aaron so much for being here. You guys did such a fantastic job. I don't know if I have some time if anybody has general questions about interviews, so you're welcome to jump on screen if you just want to chat generally. And if not, you're welcome to go. Thanks everyone for being here. I will post on Twitter when I get this video up and running, or when I have technical difficulties and I need somebody who knows how to edit. So that would be good too. So thanks again to Hinata and Aaron for doing this. I really appreciate it. Yeah. Hey, Andrea.
Hi. So one thing that I was curious about during the interview is she's interviewing for, I'll talk to you, Renata. You're interviewing for a front-end role. Although I don't know if you specifically can answer this question, but and I really like the front end too, but I really want to know the back end. I just have this need to know the back end. And so, but I'm not opposed to doing front end work. So a couple of things. First of all, is that kind of a red or yellow flag for an employer, that you did this full stack boot camp and now you're applying for this role, which if you get it would be focused on the front end. So you're not going to be sharpening or, maintaining those back end skills. So is that kind of a red flag? And then from the person's perspective, like, is that going to cause problems in the future if they later want a full stack role to accept a front end role in the beginning?
Does anybody have an answer to that?
I can have some opinions on it. I think, especially for me, when I came out of a boot camp, I went to a mobile position and I didn't know any mobile. I don't know why they hired me, but I got the role. And I've always been told that you can negotiate your title when it comes to it. So if you are a full stack, applying for a full stack position, and you want a front end, or if you're a front end and you want full stack, when it comes down to it, you could be like, okay, I really want this job, but I want a full stack title. Generally, the company won't really care because you're not asking for more money, you're just asking for a word. But I do agree with you of like wanting to know the full stack to understand everything. And I think that's like a great thing to say in an interview.
Yeah, one thing that actually I had thought about it before was I like being a full stack. I like being able to do every part of the development. And I actually chose this vacancy because like lots of people actually told me that look at my profile and everything, they always saw me more focused on the front end. Although it's not exactly what I want. So I was like, okay, I was not kind of to be like trick airing to see if you should believe me as a front end developer, but see if I could like show that. And now I saw that I can't.
I think we have another question. Lucia, if you would like to ask about full stack. I think Andrea, there's so much change that goes on in the development world that I don't know that it's going to hold you back or change the way that your employer perceives you. I think if you're always searching for more knowledge, that's a good thing. It just depends on how you do it in the way that you want to go about it. So if they're hiring you for a front end position and you say, okay, but I want to learn full stack, that might be, well, you focus on front end while you're at work. And you can talk to people who work on full stack projects or in the back or doing back end work or work on learning the back end at home. But also, if anybody has more experience with that, I would love for you to hop on and answer that question. Lucia, I know that you have a question also about full stack, so I just wanted to bring that in now too.
Yeah, I've heard from a few developers that full stack is not exactly a thing. And so far as they like most jobs when you're working at them, you are focusing on a very specific part of programming. And I have heard like, basically I've heard it both ways, that you should advertise yourself as full stack to show that you have learned both front end and back end languages, or that you should pick one and, try to go for either a specific front end with a language focus or specific back end language focus. So I'm really like, I have no idea right now, like what's out there and what the answer to my question is. Like, what's the best approach?
I think the first thing you should do is look at the company that you're applying to and see what they're looking for. But I think that Graham and Tori both have more experience in this than I do, so I'm going to toss it to Graham.
Cool. Yeah, so I think both. So the question is, do I try to say that I'm full stack, or do I try to pick one and specialize? I think you're more likely to find a position that requires one or the other. Like, you're more likely to be a front-end engineer or a back-end engineer, first of all. But when I'm hiring people, if I'm hiring a front-end person and they have some back-end experience, like, that's definitely a positive. Like, I very much appreciate when my front-end developers have some perspective into what's going on in the back-end and what's kind of required there. So I don't think there's necessarily a right answer of doing either or. I think what's important is getting across that you're interested in knowing, right? And that you can have I think having a story, right, for everything is important, right? So like I was talking about earlier, having a story about how you link your previous experience to development. Have a story about being a front-end engineer who knows the back end or wants to know the back end and why, that kind of
thing. Let's see.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, just having a purposeful answer to every question.
Great. Andrea?
Yeah. So
you don't have to raise your hand.
Just to return to what I was asking about before, if a person takes like a front end role, regardless of what the title is, if they're doing front end work and then they later, for their next position, whenever that would be, wanted a full stack role, I'm just kind of wondering more about, like, does that make it harder to get that full stack role the next time around? Because you're in an interview for the full stack role and you're talking about what you've been doing front end,
Again, I welcome anybody to jump in here if you have questions, but I feel like this is very similar to coming out of boot camp and applying for a role. You apply and you learn. And when people are looking to hire you, they're going to look at what your portfolio says. So you're not going to spend, 5 years doing just React and then suddenly apply to a full stack position with no experience doing any type of using back-end technology. And so what you would need to do is say, like, look, I've got these projects, I've done these things. So whether that's at work or whether that's an independent or a private project, I think that one of the things I love so much about the tech industry is they're willing to look at your portfolio rather than like a college degree or something and say, like, okay, well, she has spent time working as a front-end developer, but she has all of this back-end experience and she's proven herself. So I think highlighting that in a portfolio, a resume, or especially a cover letter. I know that there's like people are iffy about cover letters, but some companies really like them. And then highlight that, say like, look, I've loved working with this back-end technology. These are the things that I've done. These are the full stack projects I've created. And this is why it's important for me to do this full stack role.
Okay. I have another question, but again, I want to get
go ahead.
Okay. Well, in the boot camp that I'm in with Jorge and Lucia, it's very independent. I heard Hinata, I think that's how we say it, talking about a group project she did in her boot camp. We don't have group projects. It's a great boot camp and it's high quality, but I can see where that would be a valuable thing to be able to talk about. So where was my question in that? Just, I guess, ideas for ways to get that, I guess.
Do group projects.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah, seriously. If you show up at an interview and you say, hey, they ask you about your boot camp, and you say, I liked it, this is all the good things, I learned all this stuff, but they didn't have us do any group projects. And I felt like that was a necessary piece that I needed, so I made it happen. Like, that's way better than I did group projects because they forced them on me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so this is the way to find people to do group projects with. Or maybe just pull some people from your boot camp and say, hey, the four of us now, I know this person likes UI, this person likes the back end, this person wants to do this. Like, just find a couple and build something,
Yeah. And I think Lucia and Jorge and one other person in our boot camp have talked about doing that. And I've started to think more about what that might look like, because I think it's an awesome idea. We're all in. Sorry, go on.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, but we're all in a boot camp, and I'm afraid, obviously we want to turn out a quality project that challenged us. So that sounds to me like a happy medium between we already know how to do all this, so it wasn't challenging, and oh my God, we bit off more than we could chew. But we might not know when we're coming up with this great idea that it's really going to be super hard.
Right. Yes, there's a lot of things that come along with group projects that that you don't get by working on your own, right? So a single GitHub repo that 4 or 5 of you are all trying to push to, create pull requests, have merge conflicts, like all that stuff. Those are things that you need to know, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm hiring somebody and that they're otherwise equally skilled, but one of them has experience working with Git a lot, like that is a huge plus. Because when you get your first job, you will have Git issues, you will have merge conflicts, you will screw things up, and like, you know, being able to wrangle some of those things is very valuable. Yeah.
And also, like when you're in the boot camp, like working with your friends, like not necessarily you need to do something challenging. You can also do something on the safe side to see how it goes. And there is like some tools, like I've seen like there is a plugin, I think on VS Code, that you can pair programming with someone and you actually can see the person coding. I haven't tried myself, but I heard like it's actually quite good. So
yeah, I would also follow that up with, it doesn't have to necessarily be a group project. Open source is a really great way to get into that. It's diving into an existing code base. It's working with other people. It's understanding how people do things and what their processes are. In our Slack group, we have a pairing channel. We now are working on an open source project together. So this would be like a great opportunity to do some of those things and build those tools that, you know, Hinata had the opportunity to do. I did not have that. And I will echo what Graham said. Like, it's really important to have that before you start working. Like, the learning curve is going to be much steeper if you've not worked with anyone on a project before, if you've not gone and looked at an existing code base. So I would definitely say those are good things. And you're in a boot camp now that might feel like it's overwhelming and there's tons of stuff to do, but figure out a way to get that in there before you do that first interview. I didn't, so, and it worked out for me, but I would still say, had I done that, that would have been really good experience. Hey, Chad.
Hey, so I have a quick question. So in terms of a portfolio, would it be better to have like a portfolio site done, like customized and done yourself, versus like, for instance, especially since GitHub now has the ability to add like a README to your portfolio, would it be better to have to kind of have your GitHub be your portfolio in a sense, since all the repos that you're working on is there? All the repos you're working on is there, and you know it's less clicks from, say, going from your resume to viewing code. And then if anything, you in the repos you may have a link to the live project. Would that be a better idea? Would that be an acceptable idea, or would it be more like more traditional where you have a completed website?
I think that's a really good question. And some of the advice I was given when I was applying for jobs was, it's great to have a portfolio site with a demo of your work, because sometimes they just look at the demo and then they don't look at the code. So if you have an error in your code, they don't see it. Or if you have messy code, or, you know, you wrote it as your first project or whatever, then they won't see it. So they said like a 30-second demo and a link to the repo. But Graham, I'd love to hear what you have to say as well.
So the way I feel about it is, if your goal is to be on the front end and to build really cool looking UI stuff, then build yourself a portfolio that is just that, right? And have it be impressive. If your portfolio is not impressive, like, just use GitHub and don't waste your time on it, right? The only portfolios, and I'm, again, just from my experience when I am hiring people, and I'm not the only type of person you're going to be interviewing with, right? But when I am hiring people, I spend a lot more time looking at their code than I do looking at a portfolio or running projects, unless those things look really awesome and I'm looking for a UI specific person, right? So I guess all that just to say, if I was starting over right now, I would just have GitHub and utilize all the new GitHub stuff, rather than building my own separate portfolio. Partly because, like, if I have to design something myself, it looks like it was done by a drunken toddler. So there's not a whole lot of value that provides. So I think that's going to be a person to person. If you can just build cool looking UI stuff, then do so. If not, I use GitHub.
And for my cohort, for my group of other students, I think like the people that got hired, just me and another girl actually have a portfolio. Most people don't. So although like they say it is a nice way, an easy way to show other people work hard without one as well. But like if you have the time and if you have the talent to actually do something good, like why not? And it's also fun to work on something for yourself.
All right, thank you very much for all the answers. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Any last questions? I want to thank everyone again. Thanks, Graham, for giving us all of this great feedback. I think it's awesome to have you here and to be able to provide that, especially as someone who's been in the field for a while.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't think that anybody else has questions. Oh, Andrea has a question.
Oh, no, I just wanted to thank everybody involved in this. Really, it's so valuable. I'm sure I speak for all the people who were who are new to this field, career transitioning, just so valuable. And again, Hinata, for the vulnerability of putting yourself out there. I have great respect for you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
To be honest, I totally forgot I was like in a Zoom call with a bunch of people like halfway through, and then when I remember, I was like, oh gosh.
Hey, those of you who are still here, throw your Twitter handle in the chat.
Throw your Twitter handles, or if you're doing anything cool as well, if you want to throw your blog posts in there, your YouTube channels, whatever. I will attempt, like I said, to get this up and running and posted online sometime this week. Again, thanks to everyone. If you are not part of our Slack channel, feel free to join the Slack channel, which I posted. There you go. That will be a great way to continue this connecting, and hopefully you'll come to some of our virtual coffees or join in as we work on open source stuff together or any of the future projects that we have. So thanks again to everyone.